Well, hello and welcome to my channel and to this beginning of a journey through a book that is the foundation of really everything that I've learned on this journey. So, I don't know if you're familiar with this book, and it's interesting that I'm doing this today and that I'm being guided to make it a reading because it's not something that I've done before to read a book on live or on what do you call it, a YouTube channel. But I used to run a book club for many years, and so the books have been my dearest friends. So I was told to go and do a series on this little book, As a Man Thinketh. Oops, hang on, let me just put that in the right place. As Man Thinketh by James Allen. Now, he wrote that in 1902. It was gifted to me in 1978. And there are things that happen in your life where the signs begin to be so clear that your soul is calling you to a new path. And for me, this little book was one of those signs, although at the time I don't think I actually saw it. But looking back, it was the beginning of ripping me into a timeline of expanding my conscious awareness. Anyway, so this gorgeous man that was a manager in the company I was working with at the time gave me this little book. And I'd like to share with you what was in the front of the little book. It was actually it was to encourage me to be successful in the company. That is why he gave it to me. So it had the success by Ralph Waldo Emerson in it. And underneath he wrote, Von, I know that success will come your way. Well, I think success has come my way, but not exactly as he intended it for me or he saw it for me. However, we're all instruments for each other, and I really know that John was an instrument for me. And when he gave me this book, so I'd like to share with you what Ralph Waldo Emerson thinks of success. To laugh often and love much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the approbation of honest critics. Let me see that again. Yes. And endure the betrayal of false friends. To appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to give one's self, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. To have played and laughed with enthusiasm and sung with exultation, and to know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded. And that just puts such a different perspective on success, doesn't it? Because we're so programmed and trained that success is measured by our status in life, or how much money we have in the bank, or or how well we're doing with what X, Y, Z. But that simplifies it so much, because that means that we've all been successful. I don't think any one of you who is listening to this today hasn't done all of those things. You have, laughed often, loved much. You have, you've played with children. You've got a garden patch. Just little things. It's little things that make us successful in life. I've got a big crow outside who's definitely agreeing with me, because he's just going, yay, yay, yay. I don't know if you can hear him. So I'd like to just read some of the book, and then, I'll talk about it as I go. So it all begins with this. As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. Mind is the master power that molds and makes. And man is mind, and evermore he takes the tool of thought and shapes what he wills, brings forth 1,000 joys, 1,000 ills. He thinks in secret, and it comes to pass. Environment is just his looking glass. How powerful that one paragraph is. When you look at that, mind is the master power that molds and makes. So this journey that we're on is all about really coming home to our mind and taking back the reins and reclaiming our sovereignty by reclaiming our mind from the programming and the conditioning that has been put upon us and continues to be put upon us daily through so many different fields of information, whether it be the media, whether it be whatever, even when you listen to me. It is so important that you filter that through, well, does that resonate with me? Because if it isn't, then it isn't for you at this moment. And then to look, man is mind. So, we create our reality in our mind. What we see outside, we see through our mind. And that is the tool of thought, right? And no matter what thoughts or what you do with your mind, you're either going to have 1,000 joys or you could have 1,000 ills. Well, we've had more than 1,000 ills, I'd say, for a while. So it's time for 1,000 joys, I'd say. And he thinks in secret. That is because even when you're not conscious of it, or particularly when you're not conscious of it, your thought continue to think, and they ramble on. At least 60,000 thoughts a day are rambling on in the background there. So that is the secret, because you are not aware of them. Well, not of most of them. And it comes to pass that the environment is but your looking glass. So in other words, it's the reflection of what those so-called brumbies, the thoughts, are doing in the background. So forward that he wrote, this little volume, the result of meditation and experience, is not intended as an exhaustive treatise on the much written upon subject of the power of thought, because there is an awful lot of, people who have some sort of opinion about that. It is suggestive rather than explanatory. Its object being to stimulate men and women to the discovery and perception of the truth that they themselves are makers of themselves. Wow, is that a powerful statement? That I'm making me with every thought I think. Whew. By virtue of the thoughts which they choose and encourage. That mind is the master weaver both of the inner garment of character, so what makes us, and the outer garment of circumstance. And that as they may have hitherto woven in ignorance and pain, they may now weave in enlightenment and happiness. And that's what it's all about. It is taking back your power of thought and where you lead those thoughts. And that has been a foundation of the change of my life. Absolutely. And I've often said, if you've watched me before, that my father's favorite phrase was mind over matter. And when your parents say things and they say it over and over again, it's like, oh my God, there he goes again. But it wasn't until he actually passed away, when he left this planet, that all of a sudden things were coming my way, which really alerted me. Maybe now that he was gone, I had to take that on. And I began a student of the mind. And I go, oh, maybe he wasn't, just saying that for no reason. I needed to hear it and hear it and hear it and hear it. And so that became something that drove me forward on my journey of lifting my state of consciousness out of the mire that, we're finding ourselves in. As a man thinketh, thought and character. So this is the first chapter. The aphorism, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he, not only embraces the whole of a man's being, but it is so comprehensive as to reach out to every condition and circumstance of his life. A man is literally what he thinks, his character being the complete sum of all his thoughts. Now, look, I'm doing this book not so that suddenly you go, oh my goodness, look what I've been doing to myself. No, this is all about reclaiming ourselves. This is just another key to reclaiming our sovereignty. And when my team tells me, get this book, put it on screen, I'm going, okay, let's do it. Mostly because it's been such an incredible strength on my journey and continues to be a foundational truth. As the plant springs from and could not be without the seed, so every act of a man springs from the hidden seeds of thought and could not have appeared without them. This applies equally to those acts called spontaneous and unpremeditated, as to those which are deliberately executed. Nothing happens without a thought. And if you are, if you listened to some of the earlier videos that I've done, I think I did one with Sovereign and on, from Brave New Life a few weeks ago, and that was everything begins with thought. And so that really, this is a segue into that, or that was a segue into this. I'm not sure what that is, but they're very interrelated. So go back and watch that again. Act is the blossom of thought. Okay, so we go on here. And joy and suffering are its fruits. Thus does a man gardener. So you've got to realize that this man, when I'm stuttering a bit, is because it's really old English. And so I've got to look at the words a couple of times going, what did he say? So here we go. Act is the blossom of thought, and joy and suffering are its fruits. Thus does a man garner in the sweet and bitter fruitage of his own husbandry. So whatever you're planting in your garden, with the thoughts, which are the seeds, you have to harvest, whether they are thoughts of joy or love, or there are thoughts of fear and struggle and suffering. They will bear fruit. This is what this whole book is about. It really brings us back to this innate knowing that we are nature. We're no different to the plants and the trees and the fruits that grow in our gardens. They're growing all around me, as you can tell. I have green wherever I go. Okay, here we go. Thought in the mind has made us what we are. So thought in the mind has made us. By thought was wrought and built. If a man's mind hath evil thoughts, pain comes on him, as comes the wheel, the ox behind. If one endure in purity of thought, joy follows him, as his own shadow sure. Keep saying this. Whatever it is that you are in your circumstance, that comes from your original thoughts. But I really want to stress here, we are taught to think. Now that might really bring some clarity to you. We are taught to think. We are taught to think by the people that brought us up, because they are an expression of their thoughts and we follow them. We go to school and boy, are we taught to think there. Every original thought is completely obliterated, and thought of curriculum and what you have to know so that you get a tick and a good mark is all according to what you are being told you have to know. So you haven't got, until you really start to take stock of how you've been thinking, there's not much of an original thought left in our mind. Man is a growth by law. He talks about universal law, and not a creation by artifice. So we have, in other words, we are an expression of nature. And cause and effect is an absolute and undeviating in the hidden realms of thought, as in the world of visible and material things. A noble and godlike character is not a thing of favor or chance, but is the natural result of continued effort in right thinking, the effect of long cherished association with godlike thoughts. An ignoble and bestial character, by the same process, is the result of the continued harboring of groveling thoughts. Some of the language is really quite interesting, and you think, wow, in 1902, that was how they spoke. Man is made or unmade by himself. Okay, I'm going to say that again. In actual fact, if you look at this book, it is, I have highlighted in green, underlined in blue, and then decided, oh, it needs something extra, and so I've got a bit of red. And that is, I really made that in red. Man is made or unmade by himself. Well, I'd like you to ponder on that, and I'm hoping that the reading of this book, that you'll save these videos and replay them and listen and listen and listen and really internalize the material and go, hang on a minute, what is that offering me? What is the power in these words? What did he want us to know that could bring us to the point where we can know ourselves, where we can take back the power and our sovereignty? Here we go. In the armory of thought, he forges the weapons by which he destroys himself. He also fashions the tools with which he builds for himself heavenly mansions of joy and strength and peace. And that is, free will, I think, is so much about, not so much about the freedom to choose what to do, but the freedom to choose what to think. And as much as we've had the freedom and still have the freedom to do, curtailed by the powers that see greed and power over as, their joy, we are the ones. We're the keepers of the garden of the mind, unless we just let anybody trample in it. So really take some thought about it. This is a little book. You can read it probably in about an hour and a half at most. But we're going to take time looking at all of this because it's so valuable. By the right choice and true application of thought, man ascends to the divine perfection. Whoa! What a statement. By the abuse and wrong application of thought, he descends below the level of the beast. Well, that's harsh, but what what he means? He means that we go into in a state that we become warlike. I think that's what he talks about. We go into places of I have to be right, into places of you must be wrong, into places of blame and shame. So that really is what is meant by that. Between these two extremes are all the grades of character, and man is their maker and master. So this whole book is about mastering your mind, mastering your thought. And of course, this is what the foundation of all of my work of 35 years is, to teach people and give people tools to do that. And once you do, you are free. You are free from anyone wanting you to do something or to think something that doesn't resonate with your innate vibrational frequency. Of all the beautiful truths pertaining to the soul which have been restored and brought to light in this age, none is more gladdening or fruitful of divine promise and confidence than this, that man is the master of thought, the molder of character, and the maker and shaper of condition, environment, and destiny. Wow. As a being of power, this is you, as a being of power, intelligence, and love, and the Lord of his own thoughts, man holds the key to every situation and contains within himself that transforming and regenerative agency by which he may make himself what he wills. No, this is the secret that they've kept from you, that you're powerless, that you're not good enough, that you don't measure up to their standards. Well, all they're saying is we just want you to do for us, not for yourself. And that is changing. And this is such a gift to humanity, to give us the key to beginning that journey and doing it. Man is always the master, even in his weakest and most abandoned state. But in his weakness and degradation, he is the foolish master who misgoverns his household. When he begins to reflect upon his condition and to search diligently for the law upon which his being is established, that is the law of nature, the law of the universe, he then becomes the wise master, directing his energies with intelligence and fashioning his thoughts to fruitful issues. I can't tell you how many times I've gone back to this little book, and I don't think, it's weathered too badly. But this was given in 1978, and it's been by my bedside, within my reach ever since. And whenever I've allowed myself to fall into fear, to fall into lack, to fall into struggle or suffering, it's always this that I take and I'll start to reread. It's so powerful. Such is the conscious master, and man can only thus become by discovering within himself the laws of thought, which discovery is totally a matter of application, self-analysis, and experience. Only by much searching and mining are gold and diamonds obtained, and man can find every truth connected with his being, if he will dig deep into the mine of his soul. 1902, guys. You think that this is all new. Nuh-uh. And that he is the maker of his character, the molder of his life, and the builder of his destiny. When people have come to me for, private sessions, I've always said to them, when I look at you, I see a diamond. Everyone has a diamond inside. And my job is just to polish the facets with you. And so when he talks about gold and diamonds, we need to dig for them. Well, we're digging for the diamond inside of ourselves. Absolutely. If he will, well, I would say that if he will dig deep, right? It's so beautiful. He may unerringly prove if he will watch, control, and alter his thoughts, tracing their effects upon himself, upon others, and upon his life and circumstances, linking cause and effect by patient practice and investigation, and utilizing his every experience, even to the most trivial everyday occurrences, excuse me, as a means of obtaining that knowledge of himself, which is understanding, wisdom, and power. I'm losing my voice now. Okay. Now, look, what I'd really like for you to do is to make comments underneath, when you watch the video, because how are you finding this? And is this igniting a spark in you? Um, and if you want this material, now you can just Google it, or I like to use Ecosia, of course, because they plant a tree every time you use that as a search engine. And you can get it on Kindle, or you can get the book still available, but make sure it's the original copy because it's been messed about with. When we became gender specific, all of a sudden, they started calling it a man and a woman thinketh. But he's not talking about a man. He's talking about mankind. We have lost that word, I think. Yes. So you can also, I think, there are some people who've put PDFs on that you can download. And if none of that works, let me know, because I can let you have the material. But I really think, get the book, because it is just so amazing. And then you can do to that what I've done to it. And it'll be a friend forever. I can promise you that. Now I've lost my spot. Okay. And I can't ask you. Oh, yes, there it is. In this direction, as in no other, is the law absolute, that he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. Heard that before. For only by patience, practice, and ceaseless importunity can a man enter the door of the temple of knowledge. So we've got to keep digging, and we've got to keep looking, and we've got to keep becoming more conscious. So we're going into chapter 2, and that is the effect of thought on circumstances. Yeah. How much of our lives have we spent blaming circumstances on others? Well, I know I've done it. I mean, I was programmed and conditioned like everybody else. Must be your fault. It must be. Do you know, I was, and bless him, and may he rest in peace, but I married a gentleman whose every second word was, for everything that happened in it, who did it? Who did it? So, I don't remember if he asked when the good things occurred, but if there was something spilled, something that wasn't right. So who did it? It was always looking for someone to blame, someone who must have been responsible. And that is something that we've really got to give up. It's not about who did it. It's about, is it important? And how is it affecting me? What thoughts are coming up? What is it triggering in me? And is that expanding, or is that contracting? So here we go. Effects of thought on circumstances. A man's mind may be likened to, this is probably one of my, I have many of them in this little book, but one of my favorite passages. A man's mind may be likened to a garden, which may be intelligently cultivated or allowed to run wild. But whether cultivated or neglected, it must and will bring forth. If no useful seeds are put into it, then an abundance of useless weed seeds will fall therein and will continue to produce their kind. So, what does your garden look like? Your mind garden? Is it full of beautifully cultivated, intentional seeds and plants? Or is it growing wild with lots of seeds because you're too busy? We get too busy. I've got to do this and I've got to do that. And look, I've got to clean and I've got to do it. The maintenance of life can keep us so busy that we don't, by the end of the day, we're too tired to have any conscious ability to look within. And that is something that we've really got to correct. Just as a gardener cultivates his plot, keeping it free from weeds and growing the flowers and fruits which he requires, so may a man tend the garden of his mind, weeding out all the wrong, useless, and impure thoughts, and cultivating towards perfection the flowers and fruits of right, useful, and pure thoughts. Look, the word perfection for me is now completely non-beneficial, I'd call it, right? Because there is no perfection, and yet if we start to look at everything as being perfect, because it is what it is in that moment, then we stop reaching for something we can never get. So I would say here, absolutely, make us the fruits is beautiful. What we do in our gardens, we feed it the right foods. We plant it in the right space so that it gets the amount of sunlight it needs. By pursuing this process, a man sooner or later discovers that he is the master gardener of his soul, the director of his life. He also reveals within himself the laws of thought and understands with ever increasing accuracy how the thought forces and mind elements operate in the shaping of his character, circumstances, and destiny. Thought and character are one, and as character can only manifest and discover itself through environment and circumstance, the outer conditions of a person's life will always be found to be harmoniously related to his inner state. Now, what comes up for me as I'm reading this is this. There's been a phrase that's come up a lot, which talks about that people are not wanting to see what's going on. However, I actually don't see that. I don't understand it that way. What I do feel is that people are innately good, for the want of a word, right? Innately kind, because mankind, that word kind is part of us. We have an innate kindness within us towards each other and for life itself. And so most people cannot see how dark and how beastly, as he would call it, some can be, some thoughts can be. And so they just don't see it, and they don't choose to see it because it is so far removed from their essence. And that is where we're now going to a place. I know there's a lot of people who have, because once you are in a higher state of consciousness, you can see these things without it affecting you as much, because it is obviously not where you resonate. But you know that you said there is good in everyone. Yes, and there is, but sometimes it's really hidden by a lot of other things. And so we have to be so vigilant about seeing that the thought and character are one. So the more you are fear thinking, the more fear becomes your reality. The more you are in love thinking, the more love you will be surrounded with. And I know it sounds really simple, but that is the truth of the matter. And as character can only manifest and discover itself through environment and circumstance, the outer conditions of a person's life will always be found to be harmoniously related to his inner state. This does not mean that a man's circumstances at any given time are an indication of his entire character. No. But that those circumstances are so intimately connected with some vital thought element within himself that for the time being, they are indispensable to his development. Every man is where he is by the law of his being. The thoughts which he has built into his character have brought him there. And in the arrangement of his life, there is no element of chance, but all is the result of a law which cannot err. This is just as true of those who feel out of harmony with their surroundings as of those who are contented with them. As a progressive and evolving being, man is where he is, that he may learn, that he may grow. And as he learns the spiritual lesson which any circumstance contains for him, it passes away and gives place to other circumstances. And here's one more of these phrases. There, if it's in red, it's a biggie. Man is buffeted by circumstances so long as he believes himself to be the creature of outside conditions. But when he realizes that he is a creative power and that he may command the hidden soil and seeds of his being out of which circumstances grow, he then becomes the rightful master of himself, sovereign. I'm going to read that again because that is to me such a key. Man is buffeted by circumstances so buffeted by circumstances, that means you are feeling the outside situation. Like, for instance, the last 2.5 years, we were buffeted. Boy, were we buffeted by the circumstances. As long as he believes himself to be the creature of outside conditions. So as long as we believe that our life and the experiences in this life are determined by outside powers and outside circumstances, we will continue to be buffeted by whatever they serve us with. But when he realizes that he is a creative power, he, she, it, you know what I mean. He is a creative power, and that he may command the hidden soil and seeds of his being out of which circumstances grow. He then becomes the rightful master of himself. So sovereignty is only achieved through mastering the mind, mastering your thoughts, because your thoughts create your feelings. And therefore, whatever emotions, this is where we're going to go with this. Whatever feelings you have, we spend so much time on wanting to change the feelings. So when we're in fear, we feel certain things. And then we look and go, well, what happened to us that made us so fearful? But those days of, digging and delving and whatever, those days are gone. Time is speeding up. We haven't got the time, and it isn't necessary. Because the more consciously aware we become, the more capacity we have to be able to make smarter choices and to speed this up for ourselves. So when you understand the key teachings of this little book, then whatever feelings you have that are not in resonance of joy and love and inner peace and contentment and self-love, then examine the thoughts that you perpetuate in your mind about that. So let's look at maybe two things. The first thing is self-love. Over the years of working with thousands of people, one of the foundations that I always come back to is their lack of self-love. And it's perpetuated by the continuous judgment and self, criticism and the put downs, the inner thoughts that continue to roll around in the mind, that keeps that feeling of lack of self-love alive. So it feeds the seeds of weeds in your garden. So there is nothing that you need to change in the doing part, but there's everything that needs to change in the perpetuation of the thought forms in your mind that give you lack of self-love as a circumstance. Now, the second one that I want to mention, and that is lack. And mostly, which I'm talking about financial lack. There are so many different lacks we can address. But I'd say that financial lack is certainly one of the ways that we've been controlled so much. And it comes back again. So look at your financial lack, if that's what you have, and then go within and go, well, what are the thoughts that I am perpetuating, either consciously or unconsciously, that I was programmed with? Programs, they're not your authentic self, that I was programmed with, that I can start reprogramming. All my work is about reprogramming and reconditioning the mind so that from that, a new garden begins to blossom in circumstance, in relationship with self. And so when you look at both of those lacks of self-love, lack of finances, examine the thoughts without judgment, please, 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 because it's not you that has put those seeds in. Someone else did. But now you're weeding your garden and you're going to plant new thoughts of love, of abundance, of prosperity and health and well-being for all. That is the reason I am reading this little book. And on that note, I would like to complete part 1. And I would love your comments. I would love you to share with whoever you feel can benefit from it. I am certainly loving, again, going into this book and sharing this with you, and sharing it with you also from the knowingness that it has been and continues to be one of my most prized little gems that walks beside me. And so it helps me to keep walking my walk. And I really would love it to do the same for you. So thank you for listening and watching. And I look forward to doing part 2. And if there is going to be a part 4, because it looks like it might be, because although it's a tiny little book, there, as you can tell, the material is amazing, then we will do that. And do you know what I love about that? Nothing is finite. Just everything's fluid. They said 3 parts. I'm saying, who knows? But this was part 1, and I've loved bringing it to you. I do hope that you've loved me bringing it to you, and that it will do something special for you. So, examine your garden and go and feed the soil, and let's plant some brilliant seeds together. So until next time, think good thoughts. Love yourself. Love your life. Bye-bye.